Before we begin, take a deep breath. Settle in. This isn't just a story about music. It's about a life lived quietly but powerfully. A journey of verses and vulnerability, silence and sound. This is the story of Kendrick Lamar. Not just the artist, but the man behind the mic. From Compton streets to world stages, from studio booths to classrooms filled with hope, Kendrick's story is a reminder that true power often whispers. As you listen, I invite you to think about a moment when someone's words changed you. Or maybe when you found the courage to speak your own truth. If something in this story moves you, a quote, a scene, a lesson, share it in the comments. I'd love to know what stayed with you. Now, let's begin. It's late afternoon in Compton, California. The sun bleeds across rusted chain link fences, glinting off the handlebars of a scuffed BMX bike weaving through cracked sidewalks. A young boy, Kendrick, pedals fast, heart beating like a kick drum. He notices everything. He always has. At home, his parents are strict but loving. His father, Kenny Duckworth, once ran with the Gangster Disciples in Chicago. His mother, Paula, made a decision when Kendrick was born. This boy would not be swallowed by the streets. So they moved west, chasing stability, trading one dangerous promise for another. Kendrick's first memory of music isn't glamorous. It's Tupac, yes, but not at a concert or through headphones. It's Tupac on a mural, painted on the side of a liquor store. And it's Tupac in the voice of a neighbor, talking about revolution and pain while barbecuing out front. Kendrick would listen, not knowing yet that these were verses passed down like scripture. One day in 1995, when Kendrick was just 8, his father called him outside. "Come here, man. You gotta see this." Parked on Rosecrans Avenue was a lowrider, speakers thumping, surrounded by a small crowd. Two men stood near it, Dr. Dre and Tupac Shakur, filming the California Love music video. Young Kendrick stood frozen. The world cracked open, not with noise, but with possibility. For the first time, he saw that greatness could live just blocks from his own door. One day in 1995, when Kendrick was just 8, his father called him outside. "Come here, man. You gotta see this." Parked on Rosecrans Avenue was a lowrider, speakers thumping, surrounded by a small crowd. Two men stood near it, Dr. Dre and Tupac Shakur, filming the California Love music video. Young Kendrick stood frozen. The world cracked open, not with noise, but with possibility. For the first time, he saw that greatness could live just blocks from his own door. "I knew right then," he said years later. "This was it. That I could be something." That night, Kendrick barely spoke. He sat on the living room floor, knees pulled to his chest, watching his dad flip between TV channels. His mother noticed the faraway look in his eyes. "What you thinking about?" she asked. "I think I saw a dream today," he whispered. Kendrick was the kind of student who sat near the back of class, not to hide, but to see. His notebooks were filled with more than homework. There were sketches, verses, snatches of conversation. He'd listen to teachers, then remix their words into rhyme. He didn't speak often in class, but when he did, it was with a weight beyond his years. He grew up in Section 8 housing, surrounded by poverty, pride, and contradictions. Drive-bys were common, but so were neighborhood cookouts, teenage freestyles, and aunties who'd hug you like their own. It wasn't just the bad stuff, Kendrick once said. There was beauty in the struggle too. There was an old man who lived down the block named Clarence. He wore suspenders and smoked a pipe and read the newspaper every morning on the porch. Kendrick would pass by and sometimes stop. "Young blood," Clarence said once, tapping the paper. "Ain't nothing new under this sun. But the way you tell it, that's the difference." Sometimes Kendrick would read his raps to neighborhood kids. Standing on milk crates, holding a toy mic, he'd spit verses about what he saw. Drug deals, playground fights, his mom's tired face after a double shift. At age 16, he recorded his first mixtape under the name K-Dot. It was called Youngest Head Nigga in Charge, and it had the raw ambition of someone desperate to be heard. Top Dog Entertainment, a fledgling indie label run by Anthony Top Dog Tiffith, heard it and gave Kendrick a shot. Top Dog tested him. He'd throw Kendrick into rooms with older rappers and watch. Kendrick never backed down. He'd rap with his head down, hands clasped, body still, like he was praying the bars into existence. It was like he was possessed, Tiffith recalled, but calm, like he knew something we didn't. Late at night, when the house was quiet, Kendrick would lie under the covers with a flashlight, scribbling bars in a tattered notebook. Sometimes he'd whisper them aloud, just to feel how they moved in the dark. It wasn't just practice. It was ritual. By the time he released Section 80, Kendrick had already built a cult following. The album wasn't just about bars. It was about America, about women like Tammy and Keisha, about Ronald Reagan's ghost, about what it meant to be born black and brilliant in a country that often didn't see either. Section 80 felt like a book of sermons. It wasn't perfect, but it was sharp, brave, and unmistakably Kendrick. The world began to take notice. Then Dr. Dre called. When Good Kid, Mad City dropped in 2012, it was more than an album. It was a movie, a time capsule, a young man navigating peer pressure, violence, religion, love, and survival. Kendrick took us on a journey through Compton, through his mind, through temptation. Songs like Sing About Me, The Art of Peer Pressure, and Swimming Pools weren't hits. They were confessions. He told stories with tension, pacing, breath. Every line felt lived in. He was no longer just a rapper. He was a novelist with a mic. The album went platinum. The tours sold out. The boy on the BMX had become a generational voice. Kendrick didn't rest. He transformed. To Pimp a Butterfly was an explosion of jazz, funk, pain, and black pride. It was political and personal. It was dense, spiritual, furious. Kendrick sat with icons like George Clinton and Thundercat, studied Miles Davis and Gil Scott-Heron, and wove their spirits into his sound. He recorded in dark rooms with incense burning. He'd pace in circles before spitting a verse. The album was crafted like scripture, layered, cryptic, divine. And at the heart of it all right, the protest song of a generation. He performed it at the Grammys in chains, fire behind him, sweat pouring. The crowd was silent. Then, thunderous applause. This was no longer entertainment. It was revolution. Damn was a paradox. Accessible but deep. Raw but refined. It was Pulitzer-worthy. Literally. Kendrick became the first non-classical, non-jazz artist to win the Pulitzer Prize for music. The judges called it a virtuosic song collection, unified by its vernacular authenticity. But to Kendrick, it was just him, again telling the truth. I still feel like the same kid, he told a reporter, just with more eyes on me. He vanished for months after Damn. No social media, no interviews. He re-emerged only when the message was ready. In 2022, Kendrick released Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It wasn't a victory lap. It was therapy. He rapped about fatherhood, infidelity, generational trauma, cancel culture, and grief. It was messy, honest, vulnerable. Fans were divided. Critics were stunned. But Kendrick didn't flinch. Sometimes the truth ain't clean, he said, but it's still the truth. Kendrick never saw music as just sound. For him, it was color, shape, shadow. Every song had a picture, and he wanted his audience to see what he saw. When he shot the music video for All Right, he told the director, "Make me float." Not metaphorically, literally. He wanted to hover above the chaos, arms outstretched, like a watchful spirit over a city in pain. He storyboarded ideas on napkins, in notebooks, on his phone. This shot, it's gotta feel like dusk in Compton, like hope right before it fades. The result? A visual language as poetic as his bars. Kendrick keeps his family private, but on rare occasions, he opens the curtain. He has 2 children. He calls them his clarity. He speaks of wanting to break generational patterns, of being present, of learning patience. When I look at my daughter, he said, I see every version of myself. I want her to know that I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. His partner, Whitney, appears in his music and videos as a quiet anchor. They're not flashy. They're grounded. That's Kendrick's world. In 2023, Kendrick showed up at a small poetry reading in Leimert Park. No cameras, no press, just a hoodie pulled low. He sat in the back, nodding quietly as local teenagers read pieces about grief, joy, and injustice. When the mic was offered to him, he declined. Tonight's not about me, he said. But afterward, he approached one girl whose poem was about her brother being shot. He gently tapped her shoulder. That was powerful, he said. You made me feel something. She later said, he didn't just hear me, he saw me. That's Kendrick's gift, not just to perform, but to witness, to observe deeply, then return the world to us in verse, rhythm, and silence. After the success of Mr. Morale, Kendrick traveled to Ghana for a spiritual retreat. Away from Hollywood, press, and deadlines, he spent time with village elders, listened to drumming circles, and walked the same coastline where millions were once stolen into slavery. He said the silence there felt like truth. He met a young boy named Kojo, who shared a freestyle in the local language. Kendrick smiled, placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Don't stop telling your story." He wasn't just visiting. He was connecting to something ancient, a deeper root, a rhythm beyond beats per minute. As of now, Kendrick hasn't announced a new album, but his silence speaks. He's mentoring younger artists behind the scenes. He's writing, maybe poems, maybe scripts. He's learning piano. There's talk of a memoir, of a one-man show, of nothing at all. Because Kendrick doesn't move on demand. He waits until the world needs a new mirror. And then, quietly, with clarity, he offers one. In the spring of 2024, Kendrick accepted an invitation to headline a global benefit concert in Tokyo. It was his first live performance in nearly 2 years, and the world buzzed with anticipation. But what unfolded on stage wasn't what fans expected. He appeared not in extravagant attire, but barefoot, wearing a simple white tunic. The lights dimmed. Then silence. He stood at the mic for a full minute before speaking. "I ain't here to perform," he finally said. "I'm here to reflect." and reflect he did. He shared verses never heard before, fragments of poems, philosophical musings, lullabies written for his children. Each word felt like it had traveled 1,000 miles to reach the audience. He ended with a question. What would you say if the world listened for real? That night, the applause was long, but it was the silence in between that mattered more. Kendrick had turned a stadium into a sanctuary. Later that year, Kendrick quietly founded a community art school in South Central Los Angeles. No press release, no launch party, just a building with wide windows, a recording studio, a library, and classrooms filled with canvases, keyboards, and microphones. The school was called The Soil. His mission was simple: nurture the next generation of storytellers. Every student was treated not as a learner, but as an artist in bloom. They studied Toni Morrison alongside Tupac, played Coltrane next to Kendrick's own discography. He showed up often, sometimes just to sit and listen. He'd lean over a kid's notebook and say, "You got fire in this line right here. Keep watering it." The Soil began producing prodigies. But more importantly, it produced confidence, purpose, a sense that the mic belongs to anyone with a truth to tell. A year after The Soil opened, one of its students, a 17-year-old girl named Amara, performed her first spoken word poem. It was called Daughters of the Dust, and when she finished, the room sat frozen. Kendrick was in the back corner, cap low, arms crossed. He stood and clapped once, then again. The rest followed. Afterward, he walked up to her and said, "That sounded like my mama's prayers." Moments like this became common at The Soil. Kendrick didn't just build a school, he created an ecosystem. Alumni would return to teach. Local elders dropped by to share stories from the neighborhood's past. Everything was rooted in community, yet aimed skyward. Kendrick never called himself a teacher, but he embodied what one should be: present, honest, and deeply invested. He once told a class, "If you can describe the truth without fear, you're already an artist." In 2025, Kendrick published a small, hand-bound book titled Letters to Myself. It was never marketed or sold in stores. Only 200 copies were printed, handed out quietly to students, family, and friends. No signature, just his words. The letters weren't polished verses. They were raw, vulnerable messages to his younger selves. To the kid who watched Tupac on Rosecrans, "You're allowed to cry." To K. Dot, "Ambition ain't armor, it's fuel." To the father in the mirror, "Your silence is strength, but don't let it become a wall." Fans who came across the book online called it holy. Some pages were scanned and shared across the internet, passed around like gospel. But Kendrick never addressed it publicly, not even once. It wasn't for the world. It was for the versions of himself that had carried him this far, and maybe for those still to come. Kendrick sits alone in a backyard in Los Angeles, the sun melting behind palm trees. His daughter toddles through patches of grass while he watches, smiling. A pen rests in his hand. A notebook lies open, but blank. He's not writing. Not yet. He's just listening. Every now and then, he hears a voice. His grandmother, long gone, saying, "Still waters run deep." He repeats it to himself. Still waters? There's no studio tonight, no deadlines, no pressure, just memory, air, and the quiet hum of a man who changed the world and knows he still has more to say. Thanks for listening to the story of Kendrick Lamar. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into his life, struggles, and rise to greatness. Just a quick heads up. The voice you heard was generated by AI. But if this video gets enough views, we'll record the entire story in a real human voice. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and help us make that happen. Your support means a lot.